Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for today's live with AARP, our weekly show that we bring to you every Thursday from noon to 12:30. Before we get to our guest today, just a friendly reminder, and I'll talk about it towards the end of the show, but you can always check out our AARP Wisconsin website, which is below aarp.org/Wisconsin for all upcoming virtual events, information, and resources. Also, please make sure to check out the AARP Community Connections. I know I talk about this weekly, but I'm a big believer in the information provided on the website. If you go below, you can find volunteer opportunities within your local neighborhood and also all about the AARP Friendly Voice Initiative. This is a program that was launched earlier this year by AARP, and it's a free service. You do not need to be a member of AARP, and you could be any age. You call either a 1-877 phone number, or you can go online to put a request in for one of our trained volunteers to give you a friendly call. And sometimes you just need to hear that friendly voice on the other end, especially during times like these. So now I would love to bring in our two guests who I know very well because I work with them. So this week we're going to be talking to Helen Marksticks and also Lisa Lamkins with AARP Wisconsin. Welcome, ladies.
Good to be here.
Thank you. And as you might know, Helen's birthday was very recently, so we of course want to wish her a happy belated birthday. She turned 22, so fabulous in 22.
No. I'm proud of my age. I turned 75.
75, yes. We were very excited to celebrate her birthday virtually. But this week's show is all about, now that the election is over, what are next steps and what is this going to look like, especially for our viewers today. So of course, in January, the new legislative sessions will start in Madison and Washington, D.C. And because of the election, there will be some new faces on all levels. So Lisa, we're going to start with you. What changes can we expect to see in Congress?
Yeah, well, like you said, we have a new election, and in January we'll have a new presidential administration, but members of Congress will be sworn in early January. And Wisconsin has, I'll say, 1.5 new faces in our congressional delegation. We have, of course, Congressman-elect Fitzgerald, who will be joining our delegation for the 5th Congressional District. And then we have Congressman Tiffany, who has served for a little bit. He won a special election last spring, but then won re-election to a full term. And so we're looking forward to working with these new members of the delegation. And I guess the one thing I want to kind of share with people, or to remind people, is that Congress is still there. This is a great chance to get to know newly elected members of Congress. And it's a really good chance because many of them are working virtually. It's a great opportunity to get to connect with some of these folks. Otherwise, AARP continues to, raise our priority issues. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about issues, but just wanted people to know we have those couple of new faces and we're looking forward to working with them. We have relationships with them already, as they've both been elevated from the state legislature.
And Helen, that's a really great segue. So Helen, what changes will there be in the state legislature?
Well, there's an amazing lot of changes in the state legislature. We have 8 new senators, so that's a major change. We have about a dozen new people in the assembly. But most interestingly, we have changes in leadership, because with Senator Fitzgerald becoming Congressman Fitzgerald, there was a leadership election. And so we have new leadership in the state Senate. And as a result, we have a lot of changes on the Joint Finance Committee. And a lot of the work in early 2021 will be Joint Finance, complete new dynamics. And the co-chairs that have been the co-chairs for many, many years are gone. And we have 2 new people in those positions. So the changing, not only adding new faces, but changing roles will make the state legislature a very different place this year.
Great. And if you are just joining us, we are chatting with Lisa and Helen from the AARP Wisconsin office all about, now that the election is over, what is that going to look like, especially in the new year. If you have any questions for either ladies, please post them below on the facebook.com page, or if you're joining us on YouTube, and we will be taking your questions live in the next few minutes. So Lisa, what are the top issues then facing Congress in the new year?
Well, it probably comes as zero surprise to anyone that it will be initially COVID, right? They're working on a potential package right now to provide some economic relief, but there also seems to be some growing support for relief to individuals, right? Kind of rethinking, going back to some of those stimulus checks, in large part because of the surging cases we're seeing, and people at the same time aren't able to stay home because they can't afford not to work. So we'll certainly see COVID as an issue. We'll also see vaccine distribution as an issue as well. But Congress has, a couple of other things they're considering, and some things that AARP is pushing at the federal level. One including nursing home safety, and I'll let Helen delve into that because we're working on that at the state level as well, and that's one of those things that really hits close to home. We'll continue to work on Social Security and Medicare. Those are bread and butter issues that always continue. We're also actually pushing hard for increases in nutrition programs at the federal level, and the SNAP program. A lot of people think about these nutrition programs as programs for families with young children. But the fact of the matter is, about half of the recipients in Wisconsin are headed by households over the age of 50. So these are important issues that hit home to our members and to their families, and we're going to continue to work on those issues.
And Helen, same question to you. What are the top issues on the state level?
Well, of course, the biggest issue, as Lisa says, is COVID. But it's very different in Wisconsin because we have not had any legislative activity on COVID in over 300 days. And there are some proposals to start the year, but a lot of them actually have to do more with who gets to make the decisions and actually having programs to deal with COVID. Also, the January of the year kicks off the budget. And we're unusual in Wisconsin that our budget covers about 80% of the policy and all the funding decisions that get made in a 2-year period. And, obviously access to health care, nursing home reform, caregiver supports, some of the task force work that Lisa and I have been doing for caregivers and for retirement security and drug pricing are going to be issues that roll out. So a lot of the first half of the year is reactive to the budgets proposed by the governor and the reaction to the governor's budget by the legislative group. It's going to be a very, very busy time those first 6 months. And the trouble is, of course, we haven't the foggiest idea about how much we can do virtually and how much is going to be in person. We are gearing up for doing virtual events because that's what's safest for our membership.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so the next question, so Helen, I'm going to start with you. So how does the AARP work to influence the legislation, and has that changed because of the pandemic? And then Lisa, same question to you right after.
Well, we call our advocacy volunteers the red shirts. And we call them that because we try to create this backdrop of our presence of people in red shirts at hearings, and like at the joint finance meetings where we go all over the state, you'll have about 50 of our advocates sitting there in their red shirts. One person will testify and we'll all stand up around them. But basically what it is not only the message, but the visual to let you know that this message could be given to you not only once, but we could take up all your time by having everyone testify. And by the way, remember that behind these people are all the telephone calls and all the emails you're going to get, because we do represent a huge population here in Wisconsin. What's happened with the virtual world is we've had to do some adjusting, but we've done the governor's listening sessions and we've done testifying at the various task force proposals. And we have done that by getting on the Zoom meetings, registering, reminding people we're AARP advocates, providing testimony both in writing and speaking on the Zoom meetings, and making sure our presence is known. We do wear our red shirts as much as we can to remind people it's us. I think our members do a good job at showing up at these meetings. We have people who are very comfortable presenting and we provide them with the talking points. And then we have people who are more listeners that have always been glad to be part of the group and part of the background. They are coming to all these meetings and they're serving as note takers to let us know what's going on. They're also mostly comfortable also sending follow-up emails and follow-up material. So, the idea of having constituents contacting their elected officials goes on like it's always gone on. We show up at meetings or town halls that the elected officials have. We're on their mailing lists and we get their newsletters and respond. We follow them on Facebook and Twitter and any other way we can get a hold of them. And they still know we're there. And I think Lisa and I do a pretty good job of letting our volunteers know what the issues are, know when the hearings are, giving them talking points. And so our volunteers and our volunteer advocates feel very comfortable participating in the process.
Great. And Lisa, same question to you.
Yeah, I'll just add on a little bit to what Helen said. We have about 150 volunteer advocates across the state. And then we have thousands more people who will send emails for us or make phone calls when we send out kind of some action alerts. And it's really easy to get involved with some of those things, whether you just want to kind of send an email along or whether you're willing to join into one of these Zoom meetings. We also we had a lot of volunteers at first who didn't know how to do Zoom and how to deal with it. And frankly, Helen and I had to learn how to do the virtual world as well. But we've learned it, we've mastered it, we've done some training for our volunteers. And we have volunteers now who are giving presentations on Zoom, who have created things. They run their own meetings. They're doing what they can to educate people in their communities. So even though the world of this advocacy has gone virtual, AARP has gone right along with it, and we're trying to get creative. So we'd love for folks to come and join us and figure out new and different ways that we can make an impact. I know from my experience, I've participated now in 2 federal kind of virtual lobby weeks where we've met with our members of Congress. And on the one hand, it's not nearly as fun as seeing people in the office and walking around Capitol Hill. On the other hand, it's very efficient. You can go from one meeting to the next to the next. And I'll be honest, it's a little bit easier to get meetings with your elected officials and even with some of their higher level staff, because a lot of people are working at home and they're not traveling, and you're not missing out on all those times that it takes to travel between meetings. So it really is a good time to connect with people. And we're gonna get as creative as we can to really keep making that impact as we always have, I think.
I do have to say, I love how the AARP, volunteers, but also the Wisconsin volunteers have not missed a beat, even though it is during a pandemic, that they're still showing up in their red shirts dedicated to the cause. So, we appreciate all they have done, because we can't make such a huge impact without them. Absolutely. So Helen, what are some tips, and then Lisa, we'll have you chime in. What are some tips for individuals if they want to connect with their elected officials? So they're viewing us now, they're like, what can I do to make some impact?
Well, I think the first thing person should do is to go to the Wisconsin Legislature webpage and find out who your elected official is. And you will find out on that same website, you'll get their email addresses. I think you should send your state senator and your state representative a nice email. congratulate them on the start of the new legislative session, introduce yourself as a constituent, say that you're interested and want to be on their newsletter, and just start building a relationship. I do want to say, if you do a lot of calling and a lot of emailing, you are very likely to be interacting a lot of times with staff. But establishing a relationship with staff is very important, because staff is really the gatekeeper.
Mhm.
And staff will look at what you send them in the email. They'll look at the attachments you send and make sure they get to the elected official. So that's where I would start. I would also look and see if they're on Facebook and Twitter, if you're on Facebook and Twitter, and just sign up to follow them so you know what they're up to. And that would be a good place to start.
Great, those are great. And Lisa?
Relationships. I'm going to say one
go
last thing,
ahead.
Lisa. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be so rude. I have to say this. I'm a lobbyist, but it is the constituents that the elected officials listen to. And if I walk into an office and bring up a topic and they say, we know, we've heard from your people, it makes all the difference in the world. To them, I'm just a hired gun. You are their constituent, and it makes a big difference. So it is really important that you guys are the first ones in the door.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Lisa.
No, that was that was perfect. And Lisa, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I could just say ditto, except that for Congress, the websites that you can pull up, you can go to house.gov to look for members of the House of Representatives, and senate.gov to find your senators. And I usually you can find them by state, and I just go because it's easier to find the W at the end of the alphabet, and they're all right there. And the one thing I will say, sometimes when we talk to people, they're really nervous about calling into a congressional office and, what if the, member of Congress answers the phone? Well, I can put your mind at ease, because the member of Congress is never going to answer the phone. You will get a staff person who will be very polite, who will, listen to what you have to say. They may, hand you off to another staff person who works in a particular issue area. But you always have to remember, we just finished this election, and this election is that you voted for that member of Congress. And so that member of Congress works for you. You are that constituent that Helen was talking about, and you have every right to call. You are not, bothering them and, they're so busy doing important things. You are the important reason that they are doing that work. And so every single individual has the right to call their elected officials at all levels. And I'll make just kind of a little side note. It's great to establish those relationships that Helen was talking about while people are in the state legislature. If you may have noticed, Helen and I were talking about two relatively new members of our congressional delegation who both have come from the state legislature. And that is true of several other of our members as well. Not all of them, but a majority of members of Congress have sort of risen up through the ranks of the state legislature. So, get them while they're new in the state legislature and get to know folks, and then you'll have a great, ongoing relationship with a future member of Congress.
And I have to say, telling personal stories from individuals that live in their district is much more powerful than all the statistics that Lisa and I can provide. We can give them the big overview, but they really want to hear what it means to people in their district and what it means to people in their hometowns. So it is really good to have that individual contact and tell your individual story.
And so the next question I have, I'm going to ask both of you ladies, and then we have a question from one of our audience members that actually goes really well with this. So if our viewers right now, or if people are interested in volunteering as an AARP advocacy volunteer, what can they do? What would be the next steps? And Lisa, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, we would love to have anybody who's interested. And then think about it. You would get to work with me and Helen and Amber, and it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
super fun. And not only is it fun, but you're making a difference in your local community. So we actually are in the middle of doing a round of recruitment right now. And so the easiest thing you can do is go to our AARP Wisconsin webpage at aarp.org/WI. And there's a form you can fill out. There's an article about volunteering for AARP, and you can fill out some information. Let us know that you might be interested in volunteering. We'll, follow up with since we're getting close to the holidays, we'll probably follow up with an email at first to let you know what we're doing and a couple of next steps, and then Helen and I will get a chance to chat with you and find out what you're interested in. You can have tons of skills coming in as a volunteer, or you can have absolutely, have never done anything advocacy related before. We will teach you everything you need to know. Much of it is stuff you've already done. You know how to make phone calls, you know how to send an email, you know how to follow somebody on Facebook or Twitter. Maybe you've never sat in a legislative hearing before. But we'll make it easy for you. And I think if we had some of our volunteers on here, they would say not only is it easy, but it's a lot of fun as well.
And I'd like to add something. One of the joys of being a volunteer is not only do you say yes to helping us and yes to making a difference in people's lives, but a volunteer gets to say no. So let's say you agree with us on Social Security, and you agree with us on Medicaid, and you agree with us on retirement security, but you're not so sure about Medicaid expansion or something. Well, when we send out a call for people to do things, you just don't answer that particular call. As a volunteer, we expect that you won't speak against our positions. But if there are some that you chose to say, this isn't my fight, this one doesn't come from the guts, that's okay too. If you're someone who goes to Florida because you're a snowbird, or to Texas or Arizona or wherever you're birding these days, you can do a lot of this long distance.
Or they can take a slip.
If you say to yourself,
Thank you.
this week I'm becoming a hermit and I'm not looking at anything, an email, and I'm not doing anything for anyone but myself, you can do that. Our goal is to have enough volunteers that people can do things with enthusiasm. And when people need to take a pass, there's still a big enough body of volunteers that we're making a difference. So, if you want to be a little temperamental, we can live with it.
So you guys answered the second part of this question, but are there areas of Wisconsin where you need more volunteer advocates?
Oh, God, yes. The 20th Senate District is a place which is West Bend, in that area of the state, where Dewey Strobel, who's now the vice chair of the Joint Finance Committee, that's a place where I need more volunteers. For some reason, Eau Claire is a place where we always need more volunteers. But let me tell you, we need volunteers everywhere. My goal and dream is that I'd have at least one volunteer in every assembly district. Now, Lisa has it a little easier because congressional districts are a lot bigger, and my little assembly districts can be a little small. We also particularly need people up north. We often had people reluctant. They were willing to do some things, but they were afraid they'd have to drive in Madison or come to Madison. We have a core of Madison volunteers who have always been, and the people who are within 100 miles of Madison, who have been willing to come when we need people physically here. But you can be an AARP volunteer and be a wonderful volunteer and never come to Madison. We understand. Lisa and I sometimes travel around the state for trainings. Now everything's being done virtually. But I would say rural areas, West Bend and Dewey Strobel's area, those are my big asks for where I definitely need people. But I need all of you. So don't look at the map and say, I'm not in that area, I'm not volunteering. Come on, all of you. Lisa.
I'm going to go with the come on. We need all of you. Eau Claire, Green Bay, certainly up in northern Wisconsin. We can use people everywhere. I mean, right, there are elected officials at all levels in every community. So, and the one thing I want to add to what Helen said, not only do you kind of get a chance to pick and choose some of the issues that we work on, but sometimes you can even customize what you do. We have one gentleman, for example, who loves to give presentations in sort of senior living facilities in his community. And whatever issue we're working on, he'll take it, he'll make a presentation, and he goes to 10 different places. He used to, at least before COVID, he would go to these 10 different places and give presentations. And I bet he's been doing that for 7 or 8 years now. We have some people who are just avid writers of letters to the editor. We have people who have taken to giving virtual presentations. So you can come up with whatever it is you like to do around these issues, and we'll work with you to make sure that you're having fun and doing the things that you want to do.
And especially in times like these when, go ahead, Helen. It's your birthday week. No, you go ahead.
So one of the things I hear from our volunteers all the time, besides liking the AARP issues and liking Lisa and I, much more important to them is that they like each other. And they talk about the friendships that they've formed by doing this. And when we set up things, and we'll do it when we do virtual meetings also, sometimes we set them up on a regional basis. Sometimes you do it by a Senate district. Sometimes you do it by congressional district. So as one of the side benefits of doing this good work is you meet good and interesting people. And a lot of people have really become friends. We have one group down in Rock County who before COVID used to meet for lunch once a month because they just enjoy each other. So besides the good that you do for AARP, you actually do a little good for your own social life because you meet interesting people. And I'm sorry, I'll stop interrupting, Amber, but you know me that
I know, you know more than I do, Helen. I was just going to add that I love that there's virtual opportunities because people still want to volunteer and do something, but because of COVID, they, it's not safe maybe to do it in their community. So what a great opportunity to volunteer with AARP. And also, especially if you like advocacy, if you like, giving back to your community, this is like the most perfect opportunity. And yes, you get to work with all of us, which is the best part. So.
And I do want people to know that we are keeping up with even those virtual engagements, and not only the advocacy engagement side, but the fun side too. We even have a virtual pizza party planned for our volunteers for next week. So we make it as fun as we can make it while doing great things and really while making a difference for older people in their communities. And so, come join us. We'd love to have more folks.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, ladies, so much for joining. It's always really good to have you on the show. If you're interested in additional information about advocacy in Wisconsin or to volunteer, you could check out our website, which is below at aarp.org/Wisconsin or WI. So, but thank you, ladies. As always, I know we're going to have you back every single month to talk about all the goodness that you guys are doing in advocacy. And we thank you so much for your time today. And happy birthday month again, Helen. We love you. So. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
Absolutely. For this week's show, if you're interested, please feel free to share this on your Facebook.com page or YouTube page. And I also just want to plug some upcoming events that might be of interest to you. And we'll be bringing those up. So December 16th, we have a one-day university lecture all about music and the brain. Work for yourself at 50 plus. So maybe you're home right now and you have a hobby that you'd like to turn into a business, or maybe looking for to start your own business. Definitely check that out. And then also the Girlfriend Talk, Coping with Anxiety by hypnotherapist Amanda Kerr. You can call below the phone number to register for any of these events, or please visit the website below. below. Next week's show we're excited about, it's all about personal money management. So if one of your New Year's resolutions is to get your finances in order, you will hear from two of our associates out of the AARP National Office to talk about the AARP Money Map program, which can be found on the website. So you'll learn how to use it to budget your money and look at different ways to get your finances in order for next year. So I want to thank you once again, Helen and Lisa, for this week's show. Thank you to the producer, Darren, who once again is always behind the scenes but does an amazing job. And we will see you next Thursday, and be safe.